All right, Math 1, 7.3, elimination. And this is going to be the easy version of elimination. 7.4 will have the more difficult version. So elimination is a fancy way of adding two equations together. So in the last ones, we looked at graphing these lines and finding where the graphs touch. This time we're going to do it without a graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to add together these equations. So we're going to add the x's will go together, the y's will go together, and the constants will go together. One big thing about this is that you have to make sure that everything is in line. The x, the y, the equals, the constant. They have to be in line. They don't have to be in the line that's shown here, but they have to be in line. Okay? You can't have the equal sign on the left side and on the right side. They have to be right above each other. So whenever I add these together, I'm going to have negative 4 and negative 5 gives me a negative 9. Try that again. Negative 9x. Positive 7 and negative 7 gives me 0. 0y. And then negative 29 and positive 11 gives me negative, what's that going to be, 18. Yeah. Now, the purpose of elimination is to eliminate a variable. Whenever we have this 0y, that goes away. So we have negative 9x equals negative 18. The y has completely gone away. It has been eliminated, right? And then we divide by negative 9, and x is going to be positive 2. Right? So we have found half of our point, right? I used to write it as like 2 comma something. We're trying to find the other piece. We take our x equals 2 and we plug into one of the two equations up top. We can either plug into this one or this one. I normally try to pick the one that will look a little bit easier. Okay. To me, the bottom one looks just slightly easier. They will give you the same answer no matter which one you pick. So I'm going to say negative 5 times 2 minus 7y equals 11. I plugged in a 2 where my x was. So negative 10 minus 7y is 11. Negative 7y is 21. And y is, what's that, negative 3? Y is negative 3. So you can write the answer two different ways. You could either write it as x equals something, y equals something, or you can write it as a point. I believe that CUDA will normally write it as a point. So again, elimination, we start off by adding the equations together, and then we find our x or our y, and then we plug in. Let's look at number 2. So this one here, we look at which variable has the same coefficient, where we could add or subtract them and they'd go away completely. And if we look here, the x's, we have 4 and 4. But they're both positive 4, so we're really going to have to subtract this time. So 4 minus 4 gives me 0x. Negative 5 minus, here, I'm reading it, negative 5 minus negative 4. So that's really going to be like plus 4, right? So negative 5 plus 4 is going to be negative 1y. And then 12 minus 16, 12 minus 16 gives me negative 4. So I get rid of my x, it's eliminated. I have negative y equals negative 4. This is the same thing as y equals 4. Now I take my y equals 4 and I need to plug into one of the equations. I'm going to pick the bottom equation because I think it looks a little bit easier. So I'm going to say, well, 4x minus 4 times 4 equals 16. So 4x minus 16 equals 16. 4x equals 32. And x equals 8. So I have the point 8, 4, right? X, y. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but we look up here. They're in order. The x's, then the y's, then the equals, then the constants. They're all in order, right above each other. Number 3. So again, we look at which one can we get rid of easiest. And the answer is going to be the x's, right? Because they both have a 4. This time they're both a negative 4, but we're still going to have to subtract them from each other. One way to write this that might make it slightly easier is if you say, well, really, I'm going to multiply through by a negative 1 here. So I'm going to just rewrite these. The top one stays the same as negative 4x minus y equals negative 14. The bottom one, if I multiplied through by a negative 1, I'd get 4x minus 4y equals 4, right? Everything there's swap signs. With our new equations, we could add them here. And I think it makes a little bit more sense to add them. I think it's a little bit easier for me. I don't mess up as easily. So what I would suggest is if you realize that you're going to have to multiply through by a negative 1, go ahead and, excuse me, if you notice that you're going to have to subtract, multiply through by a negative 1 and then add. I think that makes it a little bit easier. So whenever I add this right one, I have a negative 4x plus 4x gives me a 0x minus 5y equals negative 10. This is the same thing as negative 5y is negative 10, and y is going to be positive. Oop, not 5, 2. 2. All right, I have my answer. I need to plug back in. I'm going to use I'll use the top one. So I've got negative 4x minus 2 is negative 14. Negative 4x equals negative 10. And x, not negative 10, negative 12, excuse me. And then x is going to be positive 3. Right? All I'm doing here in the orange, what I just wrote down, is just solving. Right? I'm trying to do a lot of that in my head, not writing it down. I hope that you guys are able to follow along with that. If you need to, you're definitely able to write. Well, right here, I add 2 to both sides, add 2 to both sides. Okay, you can write those things. I think it takes a little bit of time to write them. All right, we finish it up by writing it as a point. We have the point x, y, 3, 2. All right, there's number 3. Number 4. So the first decision that we have to make is which one can cancel easiest. And I'm thinking it's going to be the y's. The y's can cancel. We have a positive 4y and a negative 4y, so those will cancel. Those will be nice, and we can just add them together. 1x and 7x gives me an 8x. And then I have a 0y here. I'm just not going to write it down at all. And then I have 19 minus 27, which gives me negative 8. So this is the same thing as x equals negative 1. I'm going to plug into the top one. Again, it doesn't matter which one you pick. They will give you the same answer. One of them might be a little bit easier to do the algebra on, though. So I plug into negative 1. I'm going to have negative 1 plus 4y equals 19. This is the same thing as 4y is 20 and y is 5. So I have the point negative 1, 5. All right. Next page, number 5. I want to try to add or subtract these together. I look at my y's. My y's look like they'll cancel, but I've got a negative and a negative. So I'm going to really have to subtract them. Let's instead multiply through by a negative 1. So the top one stays the same. Negative 6x minus 7y equals 22. The bottom one will change a little bit. It will be 2x plus 7y equals negative 26. And whenever you're deciding which one to multiply by negative 1, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't change the problem very much at all. You will get the same answer whether or not you multiplied the bottom one here or the top one. It doesn't matter which one you multiply by negative 1. Honestly, I'm doing the bottom one just because I can write it in there where the 5 is just, the 5, like for the problem number 5, is kind of in the way. It really doesn't matter which one you use. So I add those together. That gives me negative 4x and then 0y, so I'm just going to leave that off, equals negative 4. So x is going to be positive 1. I plug that into one of the equations. I'm going to pick the bottom one. I'm going to have negative 2 times 1 minus 7y equals 26. So negative 2 minus 7y is 26. So negative 7y is, what is that, 28? And y is going to be negative 4, right? 28 divided by negative 7 gives me negative 4. I write my answer as a point x, y, 1, negative 4. All right. Number 6. Again, I look here and I'm like, well, which one can cancel? I've got a 7x on both sides. Actually, they're negative 7s. But since they're both negative, I'm going to have to multiply through by a negative 1. So the top one stays the same. Negative 7x plus 5y is 9. The bottom one turns into 7x, positive 7, minus 7y equals negative 7. I'm able to add those together. That gives me 0x. I'm just not going to write it down. Negative 2y equals positive 2. So y is going to be negative 1. I plug it into one of them. Let's plug it into the bottom one again. The bottom one will turn into negative 7x plus 7 times negative 1 equals 7. So negative 7x minus 7 equals 7. Negative 7x equals 14. And x is negative 2. I write my answer as a point, negative 2, negative 1. Right, and I keep writing them as a point because graphically, if we were to graph these lines, they would cross at the point negative 2, negative 1. So we're skipping the graphing piece. And maybe this is easier, maybe the graphing is easier, but we're doing the same thing. This is a different method to solve these. All right, number 7. I have a negative 1y, right? These are negative 1y's. I'm going to multiply through by a negative 1 on the bottom. And I'm multiplying through by a negative 1 because they're the exact same thing. If one of them was negative and one was positive, I could just plain old add them. But because they're both the same thing, I need to multiply through by a negative 1 so that I can add them. So the top stays the same. The bottom turns into a 2x plus y is 5. This gives me 5x is 30 and x is 6. I plug that back into our equation. I'll do the bottom one again. So negative 2 times 6 minus y is negative 5. So negative 12 minus y is negative 5. Negative y is going to be, what is 12 minus 5? 7? 7. And y will be negative 7. So my answer as a point will be 6, negative 7. All right. And number 8, our last problem. This one's nice. We can just plain old add, right? We look at our negative 7, positive 7y. So we're going to have x and then 0y equals, what is that? Negative 27 plus 23 gives me negative 4. Awesome. We don't even have to do any more work. Oop, nope, I lied to you. This is a negative x, isn't it? So then x is going to be positive 4. There, sorry about that. I pick where I want to plug in my x. I don't think it makes much of a difference, but I'm going to use the bottom one. So 4 times 4 plus 7y is 23. 16 plus 7y is 23. I subtract my 16, and 7y is 7, so y is 1. I write my answer as a point, 4, 1. There we are. All right, that is elimination.